Hey everyone, in this video I'll be showing you a powerful Necromancer Warfare build in Divinity Original Sin 2. This is going to be from Act 1 into the early Act 2 around level 10-ish here. Now what's great about this is we got Warfare skills when we knock down armor to do a bit of crowd control, and we got some very powerful damage spells and some fun stuff that we can do like Shackles of Pain. Even better is that we can use two-handed weapons to get our critical hit chance up, which is going to impact our spell's damage and the crit chance there. So there's a lot of synergy between this because we're going to have a lot of sustainability, life, and overall damage from a variety of fronts. Now we can choose if we want to do some melee attacks. We got the Phoenix dive here, which lets us close in on an enemy. I wouldn't recommend using our warfare skills until we knock down enemies' armor so that we can actually get them knocked down and crowd controlled. So another nice thing about this build is you got Bloodsucker there to give you a bit of some sustain. There's Raining Blood, which we can later use into Grasp of the Starved once you get that around level 15, 16. Shackles of Pain is really interesting, and there's also a spell called Last Rites, which you can sacrifice all your health to heal up a teammate and bring them back from the dead. And what's funny is if you had this on an enemy, it does insane amounts of damage to the enemy. That's a little bit later on. And we want to get Corpse Explosion, which you can combine a Pyro and a Necromancer spellbook to get this, and it does a ton of damage. Necromancer spells are mostly going to be for our damage, and Warfare for the crowd control, but on our first turn of combat, I'd recommend actually starting off with raising our Bone Widow here, giving ourselves a summon, and something else to grab aggro is really useful. And then we also got things like the Mosquito Swarm, which can heal yourself if you're lower on health. I'd recommend saving that if not, with a 3-turn cooldown. And we also have the Haste skill here, which is really nice. You can set up turn 1 to give yourself a bit of an extra boost. While it's not ideal, you can start off with, if you're able to get multiple enemies in a hit, you can go ahead with something like that, even though they won't get knocked down. And our Skeletal Spider is here just to attack anyone that's got physical armor so that we can end up using our crowd control options. And it can also sustain itself if there's corpses around, but we do need a lot of corpses. I also want to mention that this is for Tactician, however, it will work on any difficulty that you are playing on, and the mustache is optional but highly recommended. Now for a brief overview of our attributes, Strength is an interesting one because yes, that will impact our strength-based attacks. We actually want to get our intelligence up as high as possible. Strength is interesting. We can actually, I have +6 from gear, but typically weapons that you're going to want to use are going to have around 12 strength. The thing is, you can actually use Peace of Mind on any type of weapon that has a +2 to your strength. So you can pop that, equip the weapon that has a +2. There's actually a good hammer at the start of the game that you can get. And with that +2 to strength, once it wears off, you actually have the stat boost from your weapon. So you don't have to invest in strength at all. And it's actually optimal to not. This is because we're going to get all of our damage based off our intelligence. So we want to have this up as high as possible. I like to roll with around 28 intelligence here at level 10. And then with that, I'm going with 15 memory. This is just going to allow us to prepare more spells. A little bit more would be nice, but we got to work with what we got. And Wits is good too. You can take some points out of Wits. I like getting the initiative to make sure that we can go first, as Necromancers do have insane amounts of damage, but also that critical hit chance, which we will apply on our melee weapons and our spell casting. But as long as you can get as many points as possible into your intelligence, that's going to be the first one to pump up. Go by memory. As you feel that your spell book is running out of room, I would recommend having, I'll show you the spells obviously in a moment here, but I just like to put one in every few levels, like every 3 levels, get 1 point there, but the rest of it's going into our intelligence. And I would actually recommend no points in our strength or finesse. Constitution can be nice, however, we have other methods that we can get our overall health up, but that'd be the other stat you'd want to put points into, because we do have crazy sustain. Into our abilities. Now, yeah, this may surprise you. As a Necromancer, you don't need that much Necromancer skills. It does sound really nice, obviously, getting the 60% heal for our damage dealt from 6 points, but I have no points invested. This is entirely from our gear, and that's where you're going to get a lot of your points. I would actually recommend taking like a couple points in your Necromancer early on in the game. If you can find gear to take it up to like 4 or 5, that's really all we need at this current moment, where Warfare is actually going to give us a lot more bang for our buck. Now, there's a lot of confusion online about how scaling works on these things, but physical attacks, physical damage, our Necromancer spells deal all of that. So this is going to scale up the damage. It does sound like it is actually impacting just your physical attacks, but no, it's your Necromancer spells as well, so it's a nice combination. I would also recommend having at least 1 point in the Pyrokinetic, the reason being Corpse Explosion is one of the most powerful spells in this game, and it's going to work perfectly alongside our setup. We typically want 1 point of Hydrosophist here, but you can get that again from your gear, so you don't have to invest with it. 1 point of Arrow Thurge is also good because you can get a bit of teleport out of that, but honestly, I think the best ones to go with would be to put at least 2 points in Necromancer early on, get it from your gear. You need at least like 4 points, I would say, at this point, and then 1 point in Pyrokinetic, and dump the rest into your Warfare, because that's just, I have all my skill points put into this with +3 from gear. This gives you as high damage as possible, and then you get some of the other things here so that you can cover your skills. And for our civil ability, honestly, if you're to face the party, persuasion, bartering are pretty good ones. You want to have someone that's good at bartering on your team, someone that's good at persuasion, someone that's good at thievery, and someone that's good at sneaking. I like to have Fane here as my thief, and that's the stat spread I'm going to work with there. Now, on to our talents. There's actually some that set up this build really well. So I like to go with the elemental affinity. So this lowers the action point cost of spells when standing in the surface of the same element. This goes even harder if you have a elf, because they can use a skin flat sacrifice there and set up bleed, which will then obviously give themselves their spells a little bit easier time casting. Executioner is also really good, because if you're able to take out a target, you can just do another attack pretty much. This is obviously very powerful, but you can't use it alongside the pawn, which I think Executioner works a lot better on this setup. While the movement speed is nice, we got range, and we can do things at close range or long range, so we don't really care too much. Obviously, positioning is important in Divinity Original Sin 2, but Executioner fits this build a lot better. I also like to take the picture of health. With this, it gives you extra vitality. You get 3% for every point in warfare, and since we got 12 points, then that actually gives us quite a bit of sustainability. This is important for a couple of reasons, because we can then use our health as a resource as we get our health back so easily, and continually stay alive this way. And the most critical talent here is the Savage Sortilege here, which gives all magical skills critical hit chance equal to your critical chance score. This is crazy. I have a hammer here with 14% critical chance. That is added to our spells. Actually insane. Now, you can use Comeback Hit. This is a little bit better later on when you're using like Living on the Edge, which you can then also chain with the Shackles of the Dead and Last Rites. You go down, you come back up, it revives your teammates. It's kind of silly, and also it refreshes all your cooldowns, which is actually absurd. There's some silly stuff you can do, but not at this point in the game. Far Out Man is another one that I like. If you're going to remove any of them, it's probably Picture of Health. This increases the range of your skills by 2 meters, so yeah, this can make it so that you can hit some of your spells at a further range. Glass Cannon is another one that I enjoy playing around with. So basically you get max AP at the start of a turn, but you can get hit with statuses really easily. Another thing that Glass Cannon does that I think is important for this build is it draws enemies aggro heavily to your character, so that whenever you're getting attacked, your health is going down, you can sustain yourself that way. The last one I want to mention is Hot Head. So basically when you're at full health, you get your 10% critical hit chance and 10% more accuracy, with the definitive edition of Divinity Original Sin 2 making it a little bit harder to get your critical hit chance up. This is a really good one. And you'd think Leech would be good, but honestly, with the opportunity cost of not taking things like these here, it's probably best to avoid some of these other ones. And Living Armor is actually another really good one, giving 35% of all healing received by skills or consumables to your magic armor. This can give you some more survivability, but I honestly think that the ones that we got here just work a lot better. Now, weapons and gear are kind of the tough one here. You want to find ones that are going to boost up your critical hit chance. You might think a wand and a shield is good, but honestly, the further you go into the game, the better two-handers end up being. I do want to say, though, using a shield early game for survivability is really good, especially if you're playing on higher difficulties, but around level 10, I find that it's a little bit better to switch to a two-hander weapon. That's personal preference here, but getting your boost to two-hander, like this one has a +1 to two-hand. What's crazy about that is it actually boosts up your critical hit chance for your spells. And every point in two-handed gives you that 5%, so yeah, that gets all added on top of spell casting, which is kind of crazy. Single-handed does not get that same benefit. They get accuracy. So that's why I think two-handing weapons, it's always been my preference when playing Divinity Original Sin 2. And honestly, with gear, it's kind of best available. Like, go refresh shops every time that you hit like every level or 2 levels. And again, if you have a strength requirement of 12 and you don't have 12 strength, you can use Peace of Mind, get that, and then equip whatever gear you may have. You want to obviously be looking out for, I have points in Necromancer here, so I didn't even have to invest in it. But Warfare is typically, if you can get 2 points in Warfare, which I don't have on my rings here, there are really a lot of my pieces here. You want to get that. It's the optimal roll, but again, with random loot like this, it's hard to ensure that you're going to get everything that you want. The other stat to look out for is obviously our intelligence. So you may want to mix and match your gear. Like I have some things here that are strength-based and some that are intelligence-based. I just like to have a good mix, depending obviously on what you can find. Like this is light armor here, giving magic armor, and this one's more heavy armor, but giving us points in a Necromancer and strength. So yeah, two-handing is another skill you want to have. Like this, I got this belt here that gives a +2. That's another 10% critical hit chance in our spells, which is obviously really nice. So look out for that. In order of like importance, I would say it's probably like Warfare, Intelligence, two-handing. And then if you can find anything with crit chance, it's typically just your weapons. You're going to want to include that. There is some that give slight critical hit chance. They're all really good, and I'd recommend taking them. And then I got my critical hit chance here at around 25% at level 10, which is not bad, honestly. 6% from wit, 14 from our hammer, and then +5 from ingenious. And then also got the critical hit modifier of 175%, which comes from the power storm hammer that I was able to get here. Ideal rolls, instead of the 2 strength, I'd much rather have like 2 intelligence, but this wasn't too bad. And as for skills to have prepared, Bloodsucker, healing yourself, enough explained. That was really good. With 1 action point cost, it's useful. Same thing with haste, which will give you an additional 1 action point per turn. So you spend it now, and then you get it for 2 turns. It's honestly quite good. It's going to give itself value depending on if your combat goes more than 1 turn, which it will. Battle Stomp, again, any of these skills here that we have from Warfare, these are more so for crowd control. So use these after the shields are worn down on the enemies. So this one will basically hit in a large area, and it can knock enemies down. We want to do that. Same thing with Battering Ram. That's more so like, one can be, like, they both have similar effects here. I'd honestly think Battle Stomp's a little bit better for my playing. It's just personal preference, really. I like to have both. Bless is nice to have as well, too. Blessing a target's pretty useful. Corpse Explosion is going to be one of our biggest damage spells. You can create this by taking a Pyrokinetic and a Necromancer book and combining them together. This does insane amounts of damage. I think it's 250% physical damage, and it does it in a huge area. And if you start taking out enemies, you can start popping them. 1 action point. This is one of the best spells in the game. And there's also a Mass Corpse Explosion, which you can get a little bit later on, which is obviously a lot stronger. It does require 2 points of your memory, and it does require 2 in Pyrokinetics and Necromancer, which won't be too hard. Mosquito Swarm is kind of the spell that we want to use whenever our health is going low, because it will heal you, which is pretty good. And it can also end up bleeding the target, but it's blocked by physical armor. Phoenix Dive, our warfare skill here, is used to teleport into an area, does fire surfaces on landing. Does take 2 warfare points, but this is really good. 4-turn cooldown. Use this to close gaps. Same thing with haste. You're going to pop haste and then Phoenix Dive your way in. And for another 1 action point cost, Shackles of Pain is actually really good. So you mark a target and receive all the damage that you take, and it'll ignore any resistances that the target may have. This does get resisted by physical armor, but once you wear that down, pop this right away. It's actually pretty crazy. And later on, as mentioned, you can use Last Rites, and Living on the Edge. Living on the Edge prevents you from going down, and the Last Rite sacrifices all your health. Basically, it'll take your entire health bar and then apply that damage to the enemy, which is insane, and revive one of your teammates to full. It's a pretty powerful combination a little bit later on. Raining Blood, again, is used to use Grasp the Starved later on, but this is good because it sets up bleeding surfaces in a large area of effect, which is good for everyone. You do need Hydrosophist level 1. Battering Ram is explained. Raised Bloated Corpse can actually do pretty good. You can actually summon this in instead of Corpse Explosion if there's no enemies nearby. It gives you a summon that'll leave blood surfaces as well. And finally, Decaying Touch, which can decay the target and prevents them from taking healing. But again, this one is also resisted by physical armor, so you gotta be careful with that. I also have All In from the weapon. This is decent, but we don't really want to do physical attacks too much. We more so want to spell cast and occasionally do some other things. Another good spell I want to mention is Teleportation. If you have Arrow Thirds to level 2, which I don't, you can get that from your gear. This gives you a teleport for 2 action points, which is actually pretty nuts. And I did mention the Peace of Mind, being able to equip gear past what you normally can equip. Adrenaline's another one that's nice if you have a point into Scoundrel, which can give you kind of more bursty damage. It gives you 2 action points right away, and the next turn you lose 2, which is good if you need to finish off an enemy like right at the end of combat. Now, Crippling Blow is okay for physical attack, but again, we're not going to be using those too much. Blitz attack's good too. And one thing I want to mention, if you do want to use a shield, this is actually based off the physical damage of your shield, and it scales off warfare, so we don't need strength to use Bouncing Shield. This is pretty good with a 2-turn cooldown, 2 action points. This is really nice if you don't want to use a 2-handed weapon. And 2 Geomancer skills I want to just quickly mention is Fortify, giving yourself physical armor, which is kind of nice, and then also Mend Metal, which can give you some more sustainability. So a good way to start off combat is by hasting ourselves here to give ourselves that nice boost in the extra action point. This is just good because you want to kind of start off with that. It has a 3-turn cooldown. Once we pop that, we can then go with a Phoenix Dive if you need to get into position here. This is going to create a fire surface. There's oil here, so I'm going to explode that, and then that is just going to give us a bit of extra damage. This puts us in melee range. I wouldn't fully recommend using one of these melee attacks right yet, but we can pop a Decaying Touch. This target has low physical armor, so we can go ahead with that. And we got a critical hit off, which is great. So yeah, they're pretty low on health right at the start, and we got our full health. And our goal is to really just remove the armor from enemies, because yeah, if you have someone else that can use Battering Ram or the Battle Stomp, it's just going to knock them down, which is what we want. We also have Mosquito Storm here. This is a really good one because it's just going to give you a bit of extra sustain by giving yourself that heal if we needed it. And we're trying to find a corpse for Corpse Explosion. That's going to be one of our best skills. And at this point, Battle Stomp's the best skill here to hit a number of targets here and remove that totem, which was nice. It gave me 2 more action points, which I can hopefully take out this target 18 health. Oh, there we go. They're knocked out. So that gives us a corpse. Well, this is not ideal. I'm just going to blow him up. Sorry. Boom. That took out those two things, giving us 2 action points back, which is just what we needed. He's now a big lump of corpse. But that was enough damage to break down half of the shield on this enemy, which is exactly what we needed. We could use battering ram here if we need a bit of get close to the enemy here, but we can also raise a bloated corpse because there is a target right here that gives us another summon, which is great. And I can also raise a bone widow here for another action point. This gives us another summon. And I still have 3 action points, which is great. So I can then use something like the Shackles of Pain here on this hound that does not have a shield currently. Then I'll use battering ram just to go ahead and hit them. And again, our big Bone Widow here is just to break down shields, basically. Now, the funny thing is, anytime we have Shackles of Pain, if you can proc an opportunity attack, that's probably going to be ideal, because that means it's going to end up damaging them as well. I'm going to go for the Decaying Touch. I'm slightly out of range there. It's not ideal, but I can hit them with my two-hander, so I'm going to go ahead with that, going all in on them. 200 damage, pretty solid. Couple opportunity attacks off the target just because we have so many summons. And the thing is, we've stayed at full health pretty much this entire fight because of all the damage that we're doing. Yeah, we have infinite sustain. Mosquito Swarm is kind of our range spell, so I'd save that for opportunities where you have no other chance of hitting a target, but there it is. That is the combat on how to perform with a Necromancer Warfare build in Divinity Original Sin 2. Stay tuned for more Divinity Original Sin 2 content. It's been some years since I played this game, but it's so fun to get back into it. It's getting a lot of requests for builds. Let me know which one you'd like to see next, and hit the subscribe button below if this video is useful.